Near the end of the 1990s, two philosophers asked a strange question. Where does the mind stop? Most people think the answer is obvious. The mind stops at the skull. Thinking happens in there, behind the eyes, inside the bone. Everything else is just the world. But the two philosophers, Andy Clark and David Chalmers, were not satisfied with the obvious answer. So they told a story. It was a simple story about two people trying to do the same small thing. The first person was a man named Otto. Otto's memory had begun to fail him, so he carried a notebook everywhere he went. He wrote things down, and when he needed them again, he opened the notebook and read. One day, Otto wanted to visit a museum. He opened his notebook, found the address, and walked there. The second person was a woman named Inga. Inga's memory worked fine. She also wanted to visit the museum. She paused, searched her own mind, recalled the address, and walked there. Now here is the puzzle. Inga's memory did a job. It held the address until she needed it, then gave it back. Otto's notebook did the same job. It held the address until he needed it, then gave it back. Same information, same purpose, roughly the same speed. So why do we say that Inga remembered the address, while Otto merely looked it up? The philosophers argued that there was no deep difference between the two. The notebook was doing the work of memory. It was reliable. It was always there. Otto trusted it without checking. By every measure that mattered, the notebook had become part of how Otto's mind worked. And if that is true, then something follows that sounds almost impossible at first. The mind does not stop at the skin. It reaches out into the world, into paper, into ink, into the objects and tools we think with. The boundary we imagined, the neat line at the edge of the skull, was never really there. The mind has always spilled outward, leaning on the world to hold what the brain alone could not. This idea has a name. They called it the extended mind. Hold it gently for a moment, because something has changed since those two philosophers told their story. The notebook learned to talk back. To understand what is happening now, we have to go backward, a long way backward, past the screens, past the machines, to the very first time a human being moved a thought out of their head and set it down in the world. It happened in a warm river valley, more than 5,000 years ago, in a place we now call Mesopotamia. Between two rivers, people had begun to gather in numbers too large to know one another. They grew grain, they kept animals, they traded, and they owed, and they were owed. And here they met a problem that had no solution inside the human head. A single person cannot remember how many measures of barley each of 200 families has stored, and who paid, and who has not, and how much is left. The brain was never built for that. It holds the faces of the people we love, the path to water, the sound of danger. It does not hold ledgers. So someone, whose name we will never know, pressed a sharpened reed into a tablet of soft clay and made a mark. The mark meant a quantity, a measure of grain. Beside it, another mark for the person it belonged to. That small pressed line was one of the most important things our species has ever done. For the first time, a thought left the body and stayed behind. It did not fade when the thinker slept. It did not change when the thinker's mood changed. It waited, patient and exact, in the clay. We tend to imagine that writing began with poetry, with prayers, with the great stories. It did not. It began with accounting, with grain and debt and the quiet need to remember more than a mind can hold. The first thing writing ever did was the thing Otto's notebook does. It remembered for us. And from that moment, the human mind was no longer sealed inside the skull. It had a second place to live. Think about what that meant. A merchant no longer had to carry every transaction in his memory. He could free his mind of the burden and use it for something else. The clay held the facts. The man held the judgment. The work of thinking had been divided between a brain and a thing, and together they could do what neither could do alone. This is the pattern we are going to follow tonight, across thousands of years. Again and again, human beings meet a limit in their own minds. And again, instead of straining against that limit, they build something outside themselves to carry the weight. A tablet, a scroll, a book, a machine. Each time, the mind grows larger than the body that holds it. And each time, someone is afraid. Here is something that may surprise you. One of the wisest people who ever lived was deeply suspicious of writing. He thought it might damage the human mind. His name was Socrates, and he lived in Athens roughly 2,500 years ago. We know his thoughts because his student, Plato, wrote them down, which is itself a small and lovely irony given what Socrates believed. In one of those writings, Socrates tells an old story about a god who invented many things, including written letters. The god brought his invention to a king and praised it. This, he said, will make people wiser. It will improve their memory. I have discovered a remedy for forgetting. But the king was not pleased. He answered that the inventor had it exactly backward. Writing, the king said, will not improve memory. It will create forgetfulness. People will stop exercising the memory inside them because they will trust the marks on the outside instead. They will seem to know a great deal while truly knowing very little. They will be filled with the appearance of wisdom instead of wisdom itself. Sit with that for a moment, because it is going to sound familiar before the night is over. Socrates was not foolish. He was one of the great minds of human history, and his worry was real. He had noticed something true. When you write a thing down, you do relax the effort of holding it in your head. A part of the work moves outside you. He saw the trade clearly, and he was not sure it was worth making. And in a narrow sense, he was right. We probably do remember less, word for word, than people did in a world without writing. The poets of that age could hold entire epics in their minds, tens of thousands of lines, and recite them through the night. Almost none of us could do that now. Something was lost. But look at what was gained. Because thoughts could be written down, they could travel. A mind in one city could reach a mind in another, across distance and across time. Socrates' own worries reached us tonight, across 25 centuries, precisely because someone refused to take his advice and wrote them down. Ideas stopped dying with the people who had them. Knowledge began to accumulate, generation laid upon generation, in a way no single memory could ever achieve. The king in the story was not wrong that something would be lost. He was wrong about the size of what would be found. This is the first time in our story that a new way of thinking arrives wearing the mask of a threat. It will not be the last. Notice the shape of the fear because it repeats. Every time we build a tool to carry part of our thinking, a wise voice warns that we are weakening the very faculty the tool was meant to serve. Sometimes that voice is partly right. We will come back to that because it matters. But the fear almost never sees the whole picture. It sees the muscle that will soften. It cannot yet see the new reach that softening makes possible. Let us move forward through more than 1,000 years to a workshop in a German city in the middle of the 15th century. A man named Johannes Gutenberg was assembling small pieces of metal, each one carrying a single letter, into rows. He inked them, pressed paper against them, and lifted the paper away. On it was a page, and then he did it again, and again, and again, faster than any human hand could ever copy. Before this, a book was a rare and precious thing. To make one, a scribe bent over a desk for months, copying every word by hand. A single volume could cost as much as a house. Knowledge moved slowly, because every copy was a season of human labor. Gutenberg's press broke that limit, the way the clay tablet had broken the limit of memory. Suddenly thoughts could be copied, not one at a time, but by the hundreds, the thousands. Ideas that had been locked away in a handful of monasteries spilled out across a continent. And again, almost immediately, people grew afraid. But the fear had changed its shape. In Socrates' time, the worry was that we would remember too little. Now the worry was the opposite. There were suddenly too many books. Scholars complained of a confusing and overwhelming abundance, more than any person could ever read, more than any mind could organize. They feared that the sheer flood of words would bury truth instead of revealing it, that people would drown in information and surface knowing nothing. Does that fear sound modern to you? It should. It is almost exactly the fear people express today about the endless feed, the infinite scroll, the ocean of content that no one could ever finish. It is a very old fear. It is 500 years old at least, and in truth, it is older. And here is the quiet lesson of it. The flood was real. There were too many books to read. There still are. No one has ever read even a meaningful fraction of what has been written. And yet we did not drown. We learned to swim. We built new tools for the new problem. Libraries with systems of order, catalogs, indexes, tables of contents, ways to find the one page you needed among 10,000 you would never see. We met the overwhelming abundance not by holding more in our heads, but by building better maps to the things outside our heads. We did not expand the brain. We organized the world the brain could reach into. Remember that, because it is about to become the whole story. Now the centuries begin to move faster, the way they do. For most of human history, if you wanted to add a long column of numbers, you used your mind, perhaps with the help of beads on a frame or marks on paper. Arithmetic was a skill people practiced for years. To be quick with numbers was a mark of a sharp and trained mind. Then came machines that could count. First mechanical, with brass gears that turned and clicked. Then, within living memory, electronic, small enough to sit in a pocket. A child could press a few keys and get an answer that once took a trained clerk a careful minute to find. And when those small calculators arrived in schools, the old fear arrived with them, right on schedule. Teachers and parents worried, sincerely, that children who used calculators would never truly learn mathematics, that the mental muscle of arithmetic would wither, that a generation would grow up unable to do in their heads what every generation before had done. And once more, there was a grain of truth in it. Most of us today are slower at long arithmetic than our grandparents were. That skill did soften, in many people, from lack of use. The worry was not imaginary. But watch what happened to mathematics itself. Freed from the labor of grinding through calculation by hand, people could climb higher. The mind that no longer had to spend its effort on the mechanical part could spend it on the meaning, on the harder question of which calculation to perform and why, and what the answer might tell us. The tool took the lower work, and the human took the higher. This is the trade, seen clearly. Something near the ground is given up, something higher up becomes possible. And whether the trade is good depends entirely on what we do with the room we have freed. That is the question that has been waiting under this whole story. Not whether the tool takes something from us. It always takes something. The real question is what we do with what it gives back. And now we arrive at our own time. Almost. A little over a decade ago, a group of researchers wanted to understand what was happening to human memory in a world where almost any fact could be found in seconds. They ran a set of experiments, and what they found has a name now. People call it the Google effect. Here is the heart of it. When people believed that a piece of information would remain available to them, that they could simply look it up again later, they were far less likely to remember the information itself, but they were better at remembering something else. They remembered where to find it. Read that again, slowly, because it is more profound than it first appears. The mind quietly decided that the fact was not worth storing, because the fact lived safely in the world. What was worth storing was the path to the fact. We stopped remembering the answer and started remembering the way back to the answer. Now, this might sound like a decline, like the thing Socrates feared finally arriving. But the researchers pointed to something older and gentler to explain it. Long before any machine, human beings did this with each other. Think of an old couple who have been together for 50 years. Over those years, without ever deciding to, they divide the labor of remembering. One of them holds the names and the birthdays and the family stories. The other holds the finances, the dates, the practical facts. Neither one carries everything. Each one knows what the other knows and trusts them to hold it. Between the two of them, they remember far more than either could alone. Psychologists call this transactive memory. The group remembers together. Your knowledge includes not only what is in your own head, but a reliable sense of what lives in the heads around you and how to reach it. We have always done this. We have always treated the minds of the people we trust as extensions of our own. The search engine simply became one more member of the group, a vast, patient, almost infinite partner who holds the facts so that we can hold something else. The extended mind, once a strange idea from two philosophers, had quietly become the way nearly everyone on Earth lives. Your mind already reaches through your fingertips, through the glass, into a network larger than every library that has ever existed. You think with it dozens of times a day without noticing, the way Otto reached for his notebook without a second thought. This was already true before the most recent change, and it was, on balance, a wonder. But through all of it, from the clay tablet to the search engine, every tool we built shared one quiet limit. It could hold a thought. It could carry a thought. It could help you find a thought. It could not have one. That limit is the one that broke. For 5,000 years, the things we thought with were passive. The tablet held the number, but it did not decide what the number meant. The book held the argument, but it did not make a new one. The calculator gave the answer, but only to the exact question you posed. The search engine pointed you to the page, but you still had to read it, weigh it, and think. In every case, the tool extended your mind, but the thinking, the real thinking, remained yours. The judgment was yours. The understanding was yours. The tool was a place your mind reached into and came back from, carrying material that you, and only you, would shape into a thought. The newest tool does not wait at that boundary. You can hand it a question, and it will not point you toward where an answer might be found. It will compose the answer. You can hand it a blank page and a vague wish, and it will fill the page. You can hand it a problem, half-formed, and it will not only solve it, but explain its reasoning, suggest what you might have meant, and offer 3 more thoughts you had not asked for. This is genuinely new. Not new like the printing press was new, faster and wider but the same kind of thing. New in kind. For the first time, the thing we think with can perform the act of thinking itself, or something that looks very much like it from the outside. And so the ancient pattern returns one more time, but with a sharper edge. The clay tablet asked us to give up some memorizing. The calculator asked us to give up some arithmetic. This new tool can ask us to give up something far closer to the center. The forming of the thought, the wrestling, the slow, effortful work of not knowing and staying with the not knowing until understanding arrives. Here, the old fear, the one that has been wrong so many times, deserves to be taken seriously at last. Not because the tool is evil. It is not. It may be the most extraordinary extension of the human mind ever built. But because, for the first time, the pot it offers to carry for us is the part that was making us who we are. When the tablet remembered for us, we kept our judgment. When the press copied for us, we kept our reading. When the calculator counted for us, we kept our reasoning. The question this new tool puts to us, quietly, every single day, is whether we will keep our thinking, or whether we will hand even that across the boundary and slowly forget how to do it ourselves. That is not a question the tool can answer. It is a question only we can answer, one ordinary choice at a time. So we return at the end to where we began, to the boundary of the mind and the question the 2 philosophers asked. Where does the mind stop? We have seen that it never stopped at the skull. For 5,000 years it has reached outward into clay and paper and glass and circuitry, and that reaching has not made us less human. It has made us more. The mind that reaches into the world to hold what it cannot hold alone is not a weaker mind. It is a larger one. This is the deep truth in the extended mind, and it is, in the end, a reassuring one. To use a tool to think is not to cheat. It is one of the oldest and most human things there is. But tonight we have also found the edge of that truth. There is a difference between 2 ways of using a tool, and the whole question turns on it. There is reaching out, and there is emptying out. When you reach out, your mind stays active at the center. You use the tool to extend yourself, the way Otto used his notebook, the way the merchant used the clay, the way you use the search to find the page you will then read with your own eyes and weigh with your own judgment. The tool carries the weight. You keep the strength. You become larger. When you empty out, the center itself goes quiet. The tool does not extend your thinking. It replaces it. You stop reaching because there is no longer anything reaching from. The strength that the tool was meant to free is not spent on something higher. It is simply not spent at all. And a strength that is never spent does, in time, fade. Socrates was right about that much. He only had the wrong tool. The difference is not in the machine. The clay does not know whether the merchant is sharpening his judgment or surrendering it. The notebook does not care whether Otto is extending his mind or abandoning it. The difference has always lived on this side of the boundary, in the human being, in the small, daily choice between using the tool to think better and using it to avoid thinking at all. So there is no need to fear the tool, and no need to refuse it. The people who came before us did not refuse the tablet, or the book, or the machine that counted, and they were right not to. They reached out, and the reaching made them more than they had been. There is only one thing worth holding on to, and you can hold it lightly. When you reach for the machine, stay home in your own mind while you do it. Let it carry the facts and keep the meaning. Let it carry the labor and keep the judgment. Let it fill the page and keep the part of you that knows whether the page is true. The mind does not stop at the skull. It never did. It reaches as far as you are willing to reach. The only mind worth protecting is the one that is still doing the reaching.